I'm Rick Merle from Air Academy Associates, and I'd like to welcome you to today's tutorial. As we discuss the contents we would expect to see in the first section of the A3 template. As you know, Vision 1 is using the improvement methodology DMAIC. So the first section is entitled Define. The tools of DMAIC were introduced in the last tutorial. For this tutorial, as well as each of the subsequent tutorials, we will first look at the list of all possible tools available for use, and then we will address some of the more common ones that you will see used in the specific phase we are addressing. For the define phase, we see such tools such as benchmarking, FMEA, and so on down through waste. The Vision 1 recommended tools are a subset of the total listing. Subsequent slides will address these tools in limited detail, as this should be a review of the tools you learned attending the Green Belt or Black Belt courses. Because the space available in Section 1 is limited, it is important that the team that is completing the A3 include in the section the vital information that will fit in the area provided, and all other information or additional tools used be included as supplemental documentation attached to the A3 report. If the work unit has decided that an improvement effort or project may be needed to provide the patient better service, then there are certain actions that need to be taken to launch. An overview of what needs to be accomplished to define the project and get started, it is included on this slide. Many of these items will be documented on a project charter that we will review later. It is critical to the scope the project to scope the project properly. By doing so, the project can be properly defined and the project goals appropriately set. Scoping the project too broadly can result in the project taking too long or actually never being completed. In addition, a scope too broad can result in a solution that is outside the team's sphere of influence or require more resources than the organization can provide. Many times a project that is too largely scoped can be actually made into several projects. By properly selecting the measurements that the project seeks to change in the positive direction, this type of mistake can be avoided. On the other hand, a project that is too narrowly scoped can result in a solution that is less than optimum. It is important that the project sponsor, manager, is involved in determining the project scope. It's during the project scoping that the team is made aware of resources available, what's in play and what is not, what areas should be considered. Are there any constraints affecting the team, such as budget, time to complete, person availability? Also taken into account should be the amount of time that is expected that the team members will be involved in the project. Other than the Green Belt or Black Belt, typically, members can expect their time involvement to be between 10 and 15% of their total working times. Sometimes it is less, and sometimes it's a little bit more. Problem statements are key to launching a project on the right track. If the project statement is not clear and concise, it can result in problems downstream. It is important that all team members take some ownership in the statement, and consensus should be reached. The problem statement should define what is wrong. State the magnitude and or impact of the problem. In other words, the current pain that is being felt. And it should be in measurable terms such as cost, quality and accuracy, or timeliness. Be clear and convincing. Address the so what and why we're working on this project. Do not specify a solution. Something to remember, the problem statement is not necessarily static. This is the team's initial cut at it. As the process is studied and the data is collected and analyzed, the problem statement can evolve. It is not necessarily uncommon for it to change and get updated during the define, measure, and analyze phases. Here's an example that states, since January of 2016, the medical center has experienced an increase in the percentage of hospital stay-related healthcare associated infections. Currently, the rate is 4.5%. During this time frame, there was an overall increase in the average length of stay and a decrease in the average score received in the SHEP questions related to hospital environment. Note that there's a time frame given. A problem is stated and a measurement is cited. The negative impact is clear, and in this case, it is implied that there may be a relationship with some other measurements that are not necessarily as good as we would like them to be. We are left with the understanding that there is definitely a problem that needs to be fixed, and if we fail to do so, that will not be a good thing. Once we have a problem statement, then we turn our attention to developing project goals. Project goals are derived from the problem statement and define the desired improvement. Problem goals, like the problem statement, should be clear and concise. Project goals should comply with the SMART acronym. They should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. The goal should be worded in a way that drives action by a certain time frame. Goals should not be too narrow or too broad. Like the problem statement, they should not specify a solution. The example we started with, reduce the percentage of hospital stay-related healthcare associated infections to below 2% by June 2018. Monitor secondary metrics to confirm corresponding improvement. Notice this goal: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Now we come to the all-important topic of measures. I can't overemphasize the need to think in terms of measurements. The team starts by looking at the right-hand side of the IPO. It's those measurements, although lagging, that help determine if the process needs to be improved. Those measurements tell you the health of the process. We are trying to drive those measurements to a level of performance that will give us a process that meets the needs of the patient. Whatever measure is chosen to improve becomes the primary measure. It is this measure or measures that now become the primary focus of the project. Throughout the project, the team looks at this measurement to determine the level of improvement that has been achieved. In this case, the primary measurement, percent hospital stay-related healthcare associated infections. Even though the team becomes focused on one or two primary measures to drive improvement, the key team cannot take its eye off other measures. For instance, the primary measurement might be a quality or accuracy measurement. The team doesn't want to improve that measurement at the expense of a timeliness measurement. So, as we improve a defect rate, we want to watch the timeliness measure to make sure it doesn't go in the wrong direction. In other words, time has become a secondary measurement. In our case here, there's two secondary measurements which are certainly applicable. Observed minus expected length of stay is a time measure. We don't want that measurement to go in the wrong direction as the team reduces the percent hospital stay-related healthcare associated infections. Likewise, we would expect to see an improvement in the score received in the SHEP questions related to hospital environment. We wouldn't want to see that measurement go in the wrong direction. To improve top-level indicators, it is necessary to determine the linkage to a process measurement. There needs to be alignment. Let's start with the idea that we want to improve our SAIL rating. There are 9 domains in the SAIL system. One of the domains is avoidable adverse events. If we look at the value stream in patient surgery, it contains high-level processes that might contribute to avoidable adverse events. During a hospital stay, there's a small probability that the patient can acquire a healthcare associated infection. Looking at the high-level process, hospital stay, it becomes evident that a measurement which tells us the health of that process, which is linked to healthcare associated infection, is, if you look on the right-hand side of the IPO, percent healthcare associated infections. If the team project results in a decreased percentage of healthcare associated infections, that in turn will improve the domain rating of avoidable adverse events. This in turn will have a positive impact on the overall SAIL rating. Please recall on the slide that addressed problem statements, it was pointed out that the problem statement can evolve during the define phase as well as subsequent phases. Consequently, as we stratify the data, for instance in this case of percent healthcare associated infection, it turns out that we can come up with categories, in this case 4 different categories of associated infections. If it turns out in the measure phase that the data shows that the number of UTIs is the biggest contributor to healthcare associated infections, then we adjust the problem statement to reflect that discovery. We now have enough information to complete the VISN 1 project charter. We see here that, okay, the project has been described. We have a start date. The process has been scoped and labeled. The problem statement is clear and concise and actionable. We see that there is impact upon the patient, voice of the customer, as well as on the organization. We've set our goals to match the problem statement. Primary measurements are set, as well as secondary measurements, which we will monitor throughout the process improvement effort. Our customers and suppliers are listed. Upon completion of the project charter, the team is off to a good start. Team members are listed as their functions are cited. I'd like to start to close out this tutorial by presenting a project which was completed at White River Junction with the ID number 161 and was documented using the format A3. At the end of each of the next 4 tutorials, I will showcase this same project and emphasize the phase that we have discussed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the define phase of ID number 161 to see that the content that was selected and put into the A3 is notable. In this particular case, note that a team can only highlight so much in the space allowed in the A3 template. Supporting documentation would accompany the A3. The name of the project is Decrease Length of Stay and Optimize Bed Utilization through Interdisciplinary Rounding. This A3 report includes the problem statement, the goals, and a SIPOC diagram. The problem statement is clear and concise. It could have been enhanced by defining the period of time in which the measurement was tracked. The goals are SMART compliant. In other words, the goals include a measurement which the team is trying to drive to a certain level of performance by a specific time. At a high-level process, the SIPOC has a list of suppliers that impact the process and customers that are impacted by the process. The input and output factors are listed, as are the sub-processes that compose the process. The completion checklist contains the questions that the process owner, as well as the team lead and team members, can ask to tollgate the DMAIC project to ensure that the define phase is properly completed. By following the checklist approach, By the time all the questions have been answered in the affirmative, the team can be confident that it is time to move to the next phase in the improvement methodology, which is the measure phase. Thank you for attending our tutorial today. I look forward to having you back again for the next A3 tutorial, which addresses the A3 report and the measure phase. Goodbye.